So, in true MS Paints fashion, we are pretty late to the punch on this one. Yeah, to the tune of about 4 months late, but, hey, you're gonna make a thing, you gotta film making a thing, edit a thing. So it's late, it ain't great, but this is a fully object source lit HELLDIVERS diorama.
Welcome to HELLDIVERS.
Yeah, so what could go wrong here? A channel dedicated to low stress, low pain, max gain painting, tutorials and hobby business. And we're going to try and do an OSL only diorama. And apart from cheating a little bit to sketch some initial light values on there, we are going to do this entirely with paintbrushes. Oh boy. So obviously there's no physical releases of anything HELLDIVERS related, at least in the miniature wargaming kind of sense. So we've taken ourselves on a wee visit to the My Mini factory and got ourselves some really nicely designed HELLDIVERS minis. But also we've secured ourselves a game rip of the Terminid Brood Commander, and our super best friends over at Faux Figures set some time aside to make this into a model that is 3D printable. I'm posing these Terminids into some fairly dynamic and interesting poses, and instead of worrying about gaps, I'm just going to make it with gaps, and then I'm going to plug it with milliput. I am super short on time for this project, so I'm foregoing texture and just kind of moulding this milliput as close as I can to the existing curves and the shapes of the Terminid. And stuff like this, the flag bearer's hand. I know the majority of this diorama is going to be in black, and the back of his hand is certainly going to be in black and not facing the viewer. So anything beyond a token gesture amount of sculpting into a vague hand shape with some fingers, I'm not really worrying about it beyond this point. No, it's fine. You know the saying, guys, don't work hard, work to the minimum requirement every time. I have picked up this pine bark as a Temu special. Normally I do go to the garden centres for this, but all the bags that I've found lately, they've started doing it in really small chunks, and the stuff that I found on Temu for lizard tanks is nice and big and chunky. The trick here, as fans of the channel will have seen before, is to lay down a rough arrangement of what will be rock faces and outcroppings and rocky surfaces. All the gaps are getting filled in with my homemade sculptor mould. If you're a fan of the channel, you've seen me make this before. A mixture of paper pulp, plaster and water. If you haven't got all of that stuff, you can use neat plaster if you want, but it has to be plaster because the plaster is what allows us to do the next step. After the plaster has set, but before it's cured, roughly about 15 minutes, your mileage may vary, you can start to chip and scratch away with any kind of tool you think is relevant to reveal your pine bark underneath. As super best friend Bevo always says, you know the rules. When it comes to texturing ground, the big stuff goes first, larger rocks and pebbles, things like that, followed by the mid-sized stuff, the lighter stuff like the terrarium grit that I'm using, and then finally some sand from an actual beach. This helps to keep the ground look interesting, with plenty of random textures going on, but you never end up with big old fat rocks just kind of sat on top of the surface dirt. Then I'm going to dash on some isopropyl alcohol and water to begin a capillary action, which is then going to allow our watered down PVA, which is a heavier bodied liquid, to soak through. And this is going to seal absolutely everything together into an indestructible layer of layers.
Democracy has landed. Sending in an eagle.
Alright guys, you know me, I am pretty laid back about basically everything, but I don't have the time to sit and watch a litre of PVA dry. So, as a world first reveal, we're going to assemble ourselves a new Health and Safety Frog approved tool. It is the world first of the Dry Faster You Bastard Machine 2000 2.0 beta version. As Tony would say, we are absolutely cooking with that special sauce. So, object source lighting is not my thing. Never has been, and probably, I'll be honest, never will be. But at least I have a basic understanding of light, practical light. And I'm going to attempt to operate under the idea that our muzzle flashes are the brightest point of the diorama, the light emitting source. Essentially, they'll be our white point. Replicating a light blowout on camera like this probably is impossible, but we'll need to hide as much detail on those flashes and the immediate area as possible. And maybe in the NB roll we can have a word with Uncle After Effects and he can fix us up with what we need. We'll just have to see how it goes. Right after these messages.
What's up guys, Tony D here, and just like the push towards managed democracy, I'm back in perpetual forward motion, and I'm here to talk to you today about today's sponsor, Wayland Games. So what's going on at the UK's largest supplier of tabletop games this week? Well, a hell of a lot of things. First up is a Star Wars. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that we covered the Star Wars Unlimited first wave release. Well, now they got a wave 2. And they're playing it right with Buckethead and that guy that leaves Bibles in hotels. Corvus Porkbelly's back and with their beautiful Infinity range, and I think this is a new faction they've brought out to promote Guillermo del Toro's new Tarzan movie. 57 loyalty points, 57 loyalty points, guys. You wanna, dive right into Infinity today. Look at this little guy. He has got some sass in that wagon. Magic the Gathering time, guys. Finally, I can live my dream of a card game where Leonardo da Vinci can fight Doctor Who. Do I need to say any more? Well, yeah, I will. Hop to it because this is Bog. A friendly little connect the ends card game about ponds, frogs, and trees. Finally, a game that's my kind of pace. And this week only, maybe next week, maybe last week, I don't know. Wayland's cooking with that special sauce, with a big discount on the Marvel Crisis Protocol. This is the first wave core set, massively reduced in price, and still the best way to get a hold of these classic characters. That's a lot of money saved in that box right there. Including my favorite Batman character, Bane, along with Dr. Octagonibus and Pete Spiderman. El Diablo on bicicleta. And oh boy, my favorite Marvel character, the Thundercats waterboat ride at Disneyland. So come on down to the Wayland Games warehouse, gaming center, and website at waylandgames.co.uk. And you know the stuff costs less at Wayland. Wayland. You know that stuff costs less at Wayland. Wayland. You'll never leave without a smile at Wayland.
Alright guys, I am going to dust off the airbrush for some light value sketches here. This step isn't entirely necessary, mostly because I completely fuck it up in the next step anyway, but also this can be done with dry brushing or by hand if you have all of the time. The next stage, the OSL, is going to be done entirely by hand, you'll be pleased to know. But because there's so much going on in this piece, I chose to use the airbrush to save myself about 2 hours of mapping the luma on manually and figuring out all of this light physics nonsense. Just as a little side note, I didn't really get along with these scale 75 inks. I don't know if they're like prison inks that they've cut with brick dust or something, or maybe there's some kind of resin in the medium, but they didn't airbrush at all very well. And when I was attempting to clean the airbrush or dilute the inks with the usual agents, the ink kind of curdled and mottled and totally clogged and fucked the airbrush. Again, no idea what's in these inks, but I probably won't ever put them in the airbrush again. So, here comes the pain. It's time to add our object source lighting effect on with a brush. Layer by layer, model by model, and hour by fucking hour. This effect is achieved by thinning the paint to almost glaze levels of thin and applying them one by one to build up directional light strength. Due to the airbrush sketches, we kinda know where the light is hitting each model. That means our direction is probably going to be right, but the strength isn't necessarily going to be right. Once the initial orange is on, layered more heavily toward the light source, we mix that orange with yellow, about half and half. And we're keeping our consistency kinda glazy. And with my cat-handed fine motor skills, I'm always making sure the brush starts on the model further away from the light source and leaves the model closest to the light source, as much as I can anyway. This is what I think is actually a fairly standard highlighting trick, but one of those super secret hidden ones. When the brush leaves the model, it leaves a heavier deposit of paint than when it hits the model, if that makes any fucking sense at all. By keeping the strokes directional in this way, we end up having the illusion of stronger light from a direction. We repeat this process with super thin layers, moving to pure yellow, and then mixing that yellow half and half with white. Taking the mixture of yellow and white to the very edges, but never going full white. The full white is reserved for the muzzle flash itself. In a bid to speed things along, I did that initial orange glaze over with the layer of the initial orange with speed paint through an airbrush. Speed paint don't airbrush too well, that's interesting. And I strengthened it up afterwards with some paint, and then I just layered up as normal. Moving to the orange yellow, and then the yellow white. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this is pretty agonizing, and I at this point never really want to paint a model again. Of course, at the same time as doing all this, I got offered some dubbing mix work at a production house that I didn't really want to turn down. It's kind of one of them, yeah, you can pay your cameras off with this job sort of gig. So I went and did that. More stress into the pot. I'm angry at this diorama. I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off at my audio workstation. I'm having a great time, guys. And of course, when I was finished, and just when I thought the pain was over, I remembered that I have got a whole diorama to do itself now. Yeah, the diorama base. We forgot about that, didn't we do? I switched over to the airbrush again for the initial orange sketch and changed to dry brushes for painting on the values manually. Thankfully, we added a lot of really nice texture when we built this thing, so it leans into it quite nicely. But honestly, to me, it does look a little bit like I've just thumped the paint on there. Not quite to the degree of a toddler with a lump of clay, that kind of thing. But it is kind of hard to feel like I didn't just shit the bed at the end of this project. But, well, time is time and time is short. So, sadly, not everything went to plan with this diorama, but as my friend Stubby explains to me now and again, object source lighting, OSL, is one of those things where you can pump 6 weeks into it and ultimately look at it and think, I'm still not happy with that. So to say, I think between different jobs I was doing, 3 days is probably the total time. It's okay. I've learned a lot. I probably wouldn't show this off to anyone. I think it's alright, but also it could be a lot better. Also, I just remembered dry brushes exist. So that would have saved me some time, wouldn't it? Huge and massive thank you to my Patreon community. I know this video has taken a long ass time and way longer than it had any business taking. But yeah, I mean, thank you for your patience, and hopefully in the next video we can bring the energy back up a little bit and we can have some fun with some retro Warhammer terrain. Hopefully. Cheers. I am out of here.